Okay, as Anne said, it's great to see so many of you here this evening, and we're certainly delighted to have the opportunity to present. My name is Sinead Sweeny, and I'm the Change and Communications Manager for the entire project. And I suppose it is a significant change. It's a substantial project to complete within a 2-year time frame. To date, everything is on track. Our build and design, our engagement process has all been successfully hitting all of the milestones that have been set as part of the project. So what I want to do this evening really is to go through sort of some of the reasonings as to why we're doing this, give you a general overview of where the project is at. I have some screenshots of how it's actually going to look in Ross when you log in and what you're going to see, and then obviously give yourselves an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have once Rachel has finished her presentation. So we'll just kick off with the slides. If you have questions, please just hold on to them until the end so that we can get through the slideshow. So I suppose just to give you an understanding of why we're doing this and the need to actually modernise PAYE. As Anne said, the system has been with us since the 1960s. Very little has changed since that system came into being, albeit some forms, etc. are online and can be completed online, but the system itself is still working the same way that it has been for almost 50 odd years now. Everything else all around us has changed dramatically. The nature of employment is a significant change. When our system was designed and put together, most people had one job for life, where they worked that job. They might have changed once or twice during their career, but in general they worked the one job for life, and really their tax credits, etc., there was no need to be changing them or moving them. But now you have people working multiple employments at the same time. They also sometimes work multiple contracts of employment for the same employer, and revenue systems are not really built to take that information effectively and to make sure that people are only paying the right amount of tax. In terms of payroll, obviously that has changed significantly since the 1960s, when people were using pen and paper, abacus maybe. They've moved on to Excel spreadsheets, and now we have payroll software systems or payroll agents that manage that aspect of the calculations, etc., for the employers. In terms of ICT technology advances, because of the advances in technology, we're now able to design a real-time system. And that allows us to take the information in as people are paid, and it allows us to provide that information both for employers, for revenue, and also for the employees. And people expect to be able to deal with revenue in an efficient manner. And at the moment, if somebody rings the 1890 because they have a query about their pay slip, or maybe they've paid extra tax this week, or maybe they feel they haven't paid enough tax this week for whatever reason, something is incorrect. In general, when they speak to somebody on the 1890, the person isn't actually able to help them because the information hasn't transferred across until the P35 comes in the following February. Now we will have the information as it actually happens, so we will be able to deal with that employee's inquiry or query much more efficiently and making sure that they are only paying the right amount of tax. I suppose we would see three main beneficiaries, and the employer, the employee, and obviously ourselves in revenue, or we wouldn't be doing this. And for the employer, what we want is that their existing payroll processes will integrate with the new PAYE system, so that it doesn't cause a huge amount of disruption, and we've designed the system to be very user friendly. We want to minimise the cost for employers to comply, and I suppose a significant cost at the moment is taken up with the administrative burden. And that administrative burden is really in the form of all of the P forms that are required to be filled by the employer, but that usually have no benefit for the employer. They're usually for the employee's benefit or for revenue's benefit. So we're abolishing all of those forms, and everything will now happen through the online system. We want to make sure that the right tax is paid, but on the current dates. So there's no change to the payment dates for PAYE, they remain the same. And ultimately that should result in time savings for employers, because the staff that have been involved in all of that admin will now be freed up to concentrate on running the payrolls and getting the information in. For the employee then, there's simplified online services, and that allows the employee to maximise the use of their entitlements. And at the moment we can see a significant body of employees that are not fully utilising their credits, and it's only maybe when they come into us for a medical review or something like that that we can actually go in and move their credits. But now the person will be able to see online they're paying tax as it happens, and if they are working in several employments, they will be able to split the credits across those employments themselves, all on the Jobs and Pensions module on my account. To make sure that people are only paying the right amount of tax, at the end of 2019 and into 2020, we're going to do an automatic end of year review for every employee, and that should make sure that their credits are being utilised correctly and spread across employments if they need to be. It'll give them real-time accurate data, but it also gives them a level of transparency that they haven't had before. And it's actually a very important level of transparency, because unfortunately we do have rogue employers out there who deduct PAYE and PRSI, sometimes for several years, and it's only when the person maybe leaves that employment, maybe becomes redundant or leaves for whatever reason, and maybe goes to Department of Social Protection to claim unemployment benefit or assistance, and lo and behold they're told, well, you haven't paid any PRSI, there's nothing on record for you, because the employer hasn't paid it over. But now the employee actually physically has sight of what has been paid over for them, so it does give them an extra level of transparency. In terms then of ourselves in revenue, there's going to be a statutory in-year employer return. So at the moment the P35 is the only statutory return, the P30 isn't a statutory return. But now there will be a monthly return, but it's not a return that you have to complete and populate. I'll explain that to you with some screenshots as we move on. It'll make compliance easier from our perspective, because now we will have the information as people are actually paid. And if there's something wrong, or we know that something is incorrect in their payroll, we'll be able to intervene much earlier, before the problem escalates. Because in general, if we go out to do an audit, we're usually looking at a year or 2 years into the past. Something maybe that has been a problem has now escalated into a 2-year time frame liability, so it's a much bigger liability to correct. And we can now get in there and get it sorted and get the employer on the right track before it becomes a huge liability. We will have accurate, up-to-date income details, both in respect of all employees and from the employer. And over time it should reduce customer contacts. As with any new system, we expect an upsurge in customer contacts when the system goes live. To that end, we have increased our employer helpline. Generally there was about 13, and at busy periods, say in January, February, there would have been about 20 staff working that employer helpline. There's 120 staff being trained at the moment, but there will be more than that working the employer helpline. So they've been in training since January, and they're going to be ready to take calls, queries, everything from employers once the system starts to kick off and go live at the end of the year. And as I said, it will allow us to do timely targeted interventions. Where we go out now maybe 2 years and we're looking at a payroll 2 years ago, the company may have gone to the wall, things may have, gone sour, the employees maybe didn't get paid, they were taken off the payroll, they were paid cash, and that might have continued for a while. We'll now be able to intervene and make sure that that doesn't happen, and that the employees get what they're entitled to as well. Just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with, we currently have 2.8 million active employments registered with us. Now that includes people who are in receipt of a pension. 256,000 of those employees on our system currently are registered as having more than one live employment. Now we're a little bit sceptical, as if to make sure that all of those are correct, and we have been working on an employee list, which I'll speak about again in a few moments, to try and make sure that where people are registered as having 2-3 employments, that those employments are still live and that they should be registered with them. Because unfortunately sometimes employers run the P45, give the person the actual physical P45, but the information never transfers to revenue. So that person's employment is still open on the revenue system as, employer A, even though now they're working for employer B. So So again, we're trying to tidy all of that up. 219,000 registered employers, and I suppose part of my job really is to make sure that every one of those employers is aware of the changes and is able to put mechanisms in place to be able to comply with the new requirements from 1/1/19. 111,000 of those employers have less than 5 employees, and that's something that we're very cognizant of, and we have designed the system whereby there will be options for those smaller employers to be able to comply with the requirements as well, both on a ROS perspective or where they have an e-filing exemption through paper return. So that has been built in as part of the system. 98% of those currently file through ROS, so they are currently engaged with us in an electronic format. This is a little bit like a school lesson. These are the current obligations, and in general those obligations are not changing, but the manner in how the information is going to come into us is changing. So at the moment, when you're going to pay somebody, you must apply the latest P2C information. You must calculate the tax to be deducted, provide the employee with a pay slip that clearly shows all of those deductions, do a P45, P46 anytime somebody starts or leaves, and that process continues right up until the new system goes live. Every month or quarter submit a P30 with the relevant payment, and then at the end of the year do the P35. And for 2018, you want to bear in mind and to allow sufficient time and preparation to be able to manage that dual period for the first couple of months. Okay, in order to do all of this, we've had to amend the legislation. The majority of the legislation was amended in the 2017 Finance Act, and it has been live and enacted. The President signed it in on Christmas Day, obviously waiting for the dinner to be ready. He signs in the legislation. So the main changes, and I'm not going to get into the legislative requirements per se, but the main changes are that the P2C is now going to be called a revenue payroll notification. So it's an RPN in the new system. Payroll submissions are required on or before the employee is paid. So they must come in on or before the employee is paid. And it's before the money is made available is really, the definition of that. So before the person is physically paid, that information needs to come into revenue. Everything is guided by the pay date. The monthly statement then will be issued by ourselves, and that will be deemed as that employer's return by the 14th of the following month. So you'll have an opportunity to view it. If there are things that need to be changed, you'll have an opportunity to correct it. You can do nothing and just accept it. We will deem it as your return, or you can tick a little box on the system and accept it, and that then tells us that the employer is happy with that statement, and that becomes that employer's return. Again, I have some screenshots, probably makes it a little bit easier to follow. If there happens to be a persistent technology failure, so we're not talking about where you've forgotten your password and you can't log in. We're talking about the likes of Storm Emma. Offices are closed, businesses are null and void for a couple of days, there's no power lines, maybe, where there's been a storm or something like that. Where something like that happens, or broadband is down, there's no problem. When the facilities come back on, you upload the payroll. You still pay your employees as you would normally, you upload the payroll then when the systems come back and are working. The direct debit that the majority of employers use will still be available, but we've also built in a variable direct debit, and that has really come as a request from employers because they've asked us, can we just pay what's due every month rather than a fixed amount, which sometimes is too much or sometimes isn't enough. So they now have the option of just paying what's on that statement every month. So that's again covered by the legislation. So in very basic terms, this is how the system is going to work. So you have your employer, you have your employees that are going to be paid. Where you're using payroll software, and depending on what configuration that software provider has put together, you will access the latest revenue payroll notifications within your software. So you're not going out, logging into ROS, downloading P2Cs, uploading P2Cs into your payroll software. All of that is covered by the actual business to business the way the payroll software has been built. You'll perform your calculations as normal, finalise, close off your payroll, send your file for processing, create your pay slips, send your file to the bank, and at the same time a report of that information will come in to revenue and the software will send it. As an employee then, you're not going to see anything really different. You're obviously still going to get paid. You'll get your pay slip, but now you'll be able to go on to jobs and pensions and nearly instantaneously see what has been paid over by your employer on your behalf in terms of what should match on your pay slip is what should be on the revenue system. So getting rid then of the P30s and all of the associated P forms. So if we were to take somebody that runs a weekly payroll, for instance, as an example, so at the end of the month they will have submitted either 4 or 5 payroll runs. We will summarise those payroll submissions, and the statement that the employer will get back will total all of those submissions, and that will be what that bill is for that particular period. And that statement is then what becomes that employer's return. If you're running weekly, fortnightly, monthly payrolls, all under the same prem registration, they will all be summarised and sent back as well under one statement. If you have several payrolls, several prem registrations, you'll get a statement for each prem registration. The statement then will be deemed as the employer's return if they haven't made a correction or if they haven't gone on and accepted it. If there are new employees, that will now be handled within the payroll software system. So what you'll do is, if you have a new starter, you'll go in, put the start date into the payroll system, and you'll be able to poll for an RPN for those individuals. So you'll get the latest tax credits and cut-offs for that individual. There's no hanging around waiting for Johnny to turn up with the P45. There should be no need for emergency tax either, because wherever they've left working will have ceased them on the payroll, and their credits etc. will become available for the new employer. So it's a far more smoother transition in terms of starting and leaving employments. And as I said, if somebody's leaving, you'll go in, you'll put in a cessation date, and when that payroll submission comes into ourselves, we'll recognise that this person is now no longer working for employer A. I suppose one of the biggest changes is the P35, and we know the P35 is used as a tidy up, a catch-all, fixing things that maybe they weren't able to quantify during the year, rectifying the BIK, all those bits and pieces, maybe things that were missed, corrections, etc. That option is gone. There isn't an end of year return. Every month is now a statutory return, and that is a significant change, and it's something that needs to be built into your processes now so that you will be ready come January 19. And then for 2019 and onwards, you don't have to provide a P60 anymore for your employees. Some employers have told us that they're still going to provide a form of P60 for their employees, but the official P60 document will be available on my account for all employees, and it'll be an end of year statement that will be accepted by all banks, lending institutions, SUSI, the HSE, county councils, anybody that looks for that type of information. We will have been engaged with all of those, and they will know there's a new format for P60. For anybody maybe who's not e-enabled and won't be able to access it through my account, we will have a version available over the phone lines where it will be part of the integrated telephone system. So it will be like press 2 if you want an end of year statement, something along those lines. We're building that at the moment. Okay, just to put a little bit more meat, I suppose, on the whole direct payroll reporting and how that's going to work. So the payroll software directly reports and communicates with revenue seamlessly, okay? They will be accessing the information through the employer's digital cert, okay? So again, anybody that's running payroll, you need to make sure that they can access the digital cert, because that will be a requirement to be able to submit and to be able to pull down information. The ROS payroll reporting then, it uploads files created by the payroll software through ROS, okay? So the payroll software creates the files and then they're sent through ROS. When starting the payroll, revenue payroll notifications will be requested for all employees that have been amended since the last payroll run. Any new employees, once you've put their start date onto the system will automatically poll for that RPN for that person. So again, it's available for you. The employee themselves may also have gone on and registered their employment on Jobs and Pensions themselves. If they've done that, then it's already going to be in the system. And then we will allocate the credits based on the most up-to-date information that we have for those employees. And regularly I get asked, well, what happens if I get back a zero cert? In general, what we would say is operate that zero cert, because that person's tax credits are elsewhere and they haven't either finished or ceased their previous employment, or they've maybe allocated them to a spouse, or they have maybe 2 or 3 employments and they haven't told the current employer that they have other employments. So whatever we send back is what you should operate, and then the employee should contact revenue and fix that up themselves. To run the payroll then, the payroll software will use the details that we send back in that revenue payroll notification to do the statutory deductions, etc., just like you would taking down the information from the P2C. And then again, if there are new employees added at that stage, you'll get an RPN for them. Then the payroll software will send revenue the details of the pay and tax deductions for everybody that you've paid in that particular payroll run. The start and the end date comes in as part of that payroll submission. So again, it's a field within the data fields for that payroll submission. We will then send back an instant acknowledgement to say that we have received your payroll submission. If there are errors with the submission, you'll also get back an error message, and that will say, you know, you've 7 invalid items, you need to go in and look, and the messages will be in English. They won't be in techno speak, so they will say PPSM is missing, or, you know, they'll be very clear in terms of what the actual issue is with that particular submission. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is where you won't have the business-to-business payroll software, but I need to show you that because I can't show you the software speaking to each other because it doesn't make any sense. The Ross Digital Cert and being able to access that to get in, because while the payroll will send the information every month, if you want to go in and view the statement, you have to go into Ross. That's not going to happen in the payroll software, okay? So Ross Digital Cert, you log in as you would normally. Now I know this is going to be a bit hard to see, but we'll make the slides available at the end of the presentation, so you'll be able to look at them then. This home screen is kind of like this at the moment anyway, because we have been doing changes on the home screen. So it has my frequently used services, and over on the far side it has request RPN and employee list, and then it has upload a file and upload a manual file. And again, it's not clear there now because we've put it into a different template, so it's moved the print, but that's what it says in those red boxes. But when you get it out on the email, it should be okay. So basically, you'll click on whatever option it is. So we're going to request an RPN by file upload. Now bearing in mind, this is where your software is not doing it for you, and you have to come out and go in and do it yourself. So you'll request an RPN notification by file upload. You'll click on either file upload or by online form. So by online form is where you're not using payroll software, okay, of any description. And we do have a significant amount of people that don't have any payroll software. And then you'll submit the file by uploading again, and again it'll click there, payroll file upload, and again you'll attach the file that you've calculated your deductions on, as you would normally, attach that, and then that will be submitted to us. Upload payroll file, submit payroll by file upload, or complete online form. Again, complete the online form is where there's no payroll software and you're physically going to have to do the calculations and input that on the system. Now that will be a bit clunky if you have any more than 4 or 5 employees to manage, so you do need to bear that in mind. But we will have a lot of the information pre-populated because we'll know this employer has 5 employees and we'll have all of their basic information already there. Submit a payroll by file upload. So again, you'll attach the file, you'll sign and submit it, and again you're asked for the digital cert at that stage again. And this is all really to do with security and making sure that information is transferred correctly. So once a payroll has been received, then what you'll see here is it says completed where the little tick is. I know you mightn't be able to read it there, but where the tick is, it says completed. And over here it says active, and on this screen it actually says 5. I know you can't see it there, but that generally tells you the amount of people that you've paid. So you know if you should have 10 there, you've missed 5 people off your payroll, and you need to go back and look at it. But again, it's a good sort of overall check to make sure that what has been submitted is accurate. Then if you want to go back in and view previous payrolls, so maybe you want to go back and check what did you submit last month, and you don't want to do it through the payroll software, you can go in and view the previous payrolls. Again, it'll hold the last couple of payrolls that you have submitted, and every payroll gets a unique reference number, so you'll be able to search by that reference number. So when you click on the drop down, what you'll get is payroll run reference. You'll select whatever year it is that you want to look at, and the particular payroll run reference will come up there, and then you can click search. And then it brings up the actual payroll information, and it'll bring you up the line detail for each submission. So it'll show you exactly what you've submitted for every person. And that's there, you can just see there's 2 rows of information populated there for 2 individuals, and again just the amounts in terms of how they look going across the page. So to view the statement, and this is where most employers will be viewing the information at the end of the month to see what their liability is and to make sure that it's correct. So you'll click view statement, and I know it's hard to see, but here in this box, this is for statements, okay? So January, February, March, April. This one says deemed, and I suppose when you get these slides you can have a look at them yourself. Deemed, accepted, accepted, and this one is due. And here you have the option to go in and view and accept, or just view and make a payment, because again you might have to pay if you haven't got direct debit facility already set up. And then when you click, you'll get the summary details. So this is really your overall statement, and up on the left hand side, every submission that you've made for the month will be summarised, and that will be your bottom line total there in terms of, on this one it's €414, whatever your liability will be. Down here you have an option to click, accept and submit, and once you do that, then the return has been accepted and submitted, and that becomes your return and your liability for that period. But as I said, you don't even have to go in and do that. If you're happy that the information is correct, once you leave it sitting there, we will deem it as your return anyway. So I suppose it's just to give you an idea of how it's going to look. It is going to be very straightforward on the ROS screens, and it will be 1 or 2 clicks to get you where you want to go, and the information will be there. I suppose from the last year and a half of being out on the road and meeting with employers, we are aware that there is a big focus on the end of year process, and it's a big focus that now has to change, and you still have a couple of months to put things in place to make sure that for next year it's not all an end of year process. Every month is now a statutory return, so March and April are no different from the month of December. Every single month the information needs to be accurate and correct, and the option, as I said, to tidy up is gone. So you do have to look at your internal business processes and make sure that if you have different departments feeding in information, that they're aware of the timelines around all of this. It also makes the whole regime very visible. It's visible to ourselves in revenue, but it's also visible to the employees. And if they're not able to reconcile what's on their payslip with what's on the revenue system, they'll be straight on to you. They'll be straight on to Anne, or they'll be straight on to us to say what's wrong, you know, and there will be problems like that, you know, where things aren't transferred over correctly. So you do need to make sure that it's as accurate as possible when you're submitting it. It's also important to bear in mind it will be feeding into our risk analysis systems, and where we are continuously seeing payrolls being corrected, we will be making interventions to see what's wrong. Is there something wrong in the internal business processes that this payroll is constantly being corrected? I'm not talking about where you forgot to pay Johnny his overtime. I'm not talking about, you know, a bonus run that had to be done because the boss was feeling generous and everybody got an extra payment. It's not those type of corrections, but we do know the payroll can be manipulated in terms of moving money around the business and not paying over what's due. So again, it's very important that whatever is deducted is paid over, and it's paid over correctly, and that the payroll isn't being constantly corrected. The list of employees then. Since June, we've been asking employers to submit a list of all of their employees. And really, the purpose of this is to ensure that for 1119, we only have the people that are supposed to be registered as working for that employer on our system. Otherwise, the RPM won't issue correctly for them, particularly maybe where their previous job wasn't ceased correctly, and credits maybe are going to that previous job instead of going to their current job. So we started in June, and we'll be following up once we get the employee lists in. We've had over 1,200 so far submitted, and we only started it at the end of June. And basically, we're doing it in 3 tranches. The first tranche we're covering legal, accounting, management, architecture, engineering, etc. The next tranche will be in August, and then the final tranche will be in September. And what will happen is, when you log on to Ross, there'll be a little message there for you on the actual home page to say it's now your turn to upload the employee list. The payroll software providers have designed a report, the majority of them, that you can simply pull down and send in to us. But what I would ask you to do is make sure that you check everybody on that is still working for you, and that you have the correct PPSNs for all of those people as well. The employer help desk will be taking any questions or queries that you have in relation to that. I've put their number up there, and we also issued an e-brief on the 12th of July setting out exactly what's required, so that's available there as well. We have issued letters to all employers, so every employer in the country has got a letter to tell them that these changes are coming. We've been, as I said, out and about at an extensive amount of events. Anywhere I can get a willing audience, I have a deck of slides and we're ready to go. Certainly we've covered a huge amount of the country and a huge amount of employers, agents, practitioners, and we'll continue to do that. We do have national compliance imperatives, and they're really sort of revenues targets for the year, and there is a big focus on PREM, so people may have received audit or profile interview intervention type letters, because we are focusing on PAYE and getting things right for 1119. At the moment, we're trying to use that as an opportunity to make them aware of the changes that are coming down the line. We've been reviewing the 2017 P35 data, and to say it's horrific is an understatement. We had 128,000 employments notified to us for the first time when the P35 came in. Now, all of those people were already in employment with those employers. No P2C was taken down, and the first time they were notified was when the P35 came in. We can see where very old tax credit certs were being applied against them, 2008, 2009. Some of them have underpayments, some of them have overpayments. We have been issuing new P2Cs and tax credit certs for any of those employments, and I don't know whether any have received them, but they are winging their way at the moment. We've issued about 100,000 so far. We're also doing customer service visits, and they really and truly are a customer service visit. It's not an audit. They're not coming out to look at your books and records. You may get a telephone call, or you may get a person to call out and visit your actual premises. They'll be contacting you by phone or in writing, and I'd encourage you to let them in and sit with them and go through the practices and procedures that you need to have in place for 1119. They are not looking at books and records. It's not an audit. It's really a customer service visit to help and assist and to get people ready for 1119. We've carried out about 4,000 of them at the moment in and around the Dublin region, and another 4,000 in the BMW region. So, you know, they're out there, and certainly the feedback we're getting is that employers were delighted that they called out and showed them and helped them, and they've brought screenshots of what it looks like as well. And sometimes, you know, when people are sitting in their own offices, they have questions and queries, and the staff are able to answer them, I hope. We're also going to have a media and advertising campaign, and that'll be running from September. We purposely haven't been pushing it on the advertising front because it's a little bit early in terms of getting the message out there and getting people to change over. We've been certainly pushing it with employers on a one-to-one basis for the last year and a half. We're also going to run revenue seminars, and they'll probably kick off towards the end of September and into October. They will be in all regions, and certainly Dundalk, Drogheda, all those areas will be covered. You can go on and register interest on revenue.ie, and I have a screenshot I'll show you in a moment how you can do that. Just to give you an idea of some of the places where we have been in the last couple of weeks and months, and it is a huge variety, from payroll providers to practitioners to tax agents to accounting bodies, the likes of the Paycheck and other similar payroll bureaus. We've attended with a lot of those as well, and in general the feedback has been very good from all of the sessions, and we've certainly got a huge level of engagement when we go back to the office, where queries have come in directly to ourselves as a result of being out at these sessions. So you can see they're varied. We've been at the Ploughing Championships, we'll be there again this year. We've been meeting with the IFA at night time, 9-10 o'clock at night. They won't come in when the sun is shining, so we have to meet them at those hours. So, you know, again, we're doing our best to get the message out there and to make sure that people are ready for the change. So this is what I want you to take away from tonight, and really it's about getting ready and making sure that you have your employees registered correctly with us, okay? Making sure that the PPSN is correct, and to that end we have a PPSN checker available on ROS since the 12th of April. You can check up to 10 PPSNs at any one time, and I'd encourage you to do that, particularly where you're taking on new starters. Make sure you verify that that's the right person with the right PPSN. It's amazing the amount of the same PPSN that's in use by different people, the amount of incorrect PPSNs that are on the system, and the amount of made up PPSNs that have managed to get through the character checks and get on the system. So again, just make sure you're paying the right person, that you verify that that is John or Mary or whoever it is, and it's not their dad's or mom's PPS number that they're using, as we see quite often. Making sure you're using the most up-to-date tax credit cert for everybody that you're employing and paying, particularly now because DEASP payments are being taxed through that P2C. So if somebody's out on illness benefit, their tax credits and reductions are reduced, and they'll be reduced within a couple of weeks. So you do need to check that you're operating the most up-to-date cert, okay? Making sure you complete the P45 for anybody that ceases with you, and then making sure you look at your own controls and your own practices, particularly in terms of BIK. Cars, we know, are usually reviewed at the end of the year, maybe October, November time. That's where there's an end of year return. Now you have a monthly return, so you do need to look at your cars. I would suggest quarterly, but if you can get them to give you the information monthly, try and get it as right as possible. If they're heading into another band, move them into that other band. So again, it's something that you need to be aware of. It's something that you need to look at in your own internal business processes. And making sure you complete the P35, etc. at the end of the year. The revenue seminars then, as I said, they're planned from the end of September. We've 12,500 people registered at the moment. I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. They're free to attend. We will have live demonstrations, and certainly we'll have plenty of staff on hand in every region to sit with people, show them how the system will look and feel. We're going to have pre-recorded videos of somebody actually uploading their payroll, etc., and show you how it'll work and what it looks like. I'm designing those at the moment, and you can register your interest on revenue.ie. And what we're going to have then is like a ticketing event with Eventbrite, where we will set up all of the hotels with the appropriate times, and you can go on and click on whatever time and venue suits you, and you'll be able to attend then at that. We would suggest that if employers are sending staff, that they send the right staff. Make sure they're the payroll people, payroll managers, payroll operators. A lot of the directors won't have any involvement in this, and it needs to be the person that's sitting on the ground needs to be able to work this new system. We will probably have to cap it in terms of maybe 2 per employer or 3, because obviously at 12,500 at the moment, I can't really see us taking in the 219,000 employers. But you know, we're willing to run as many as it takes, but we will have to put a cap on the venues as well. So just bear that in mind. Make sure it's the right people that are attending those seminars. That's what it looks like up on the home page at the moment. You simply log on, you're asked if you're an employer or an agent, how many staff you're representing, and you just leave your email contact details. We will issue an email to everybody when the Eventbrite goes live, and then you can log on and pick a date and a venue that suits you. We have a huge amount of information available. We have a Ross Help Centre for the kind of technical side of things with Ross, and certainly that will be beefed up as well in terms of the new system. But there's a huge amount of FAQs, etc. up there on the Ross site as it currently is. And then up on revenue.ie, we have our own page under employing people. It's called PAYE Modernisation. And any changes or anything that's agreed will be up there. Any meetings from any stakeholder events that we have are up there. Any minutes, any action points, it's all there. Things that have been raised as part of the initial consultation process. And then we have a dedicated email address, payemodernisation@revenue.ie. And we would encourage you, if you've thought of something that maybe we didn't get to answer tonight, or something strikes you over the next few days, please contact the email address there. I have a team of staff in the office managing that, and we certainly are responding, and we're getting quite a lot of traffic on that email address. So that's it from me. I'll hand over to Rachel. Thanks very much.